Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tony Lindsay podcast. Or let me see. Hold up. I'm gonna try to come up with some. I tried to get a name for my podcast because I'm going to be creating a podcast. So I went through a list of names with you guys. So I'm gonna try some of them out and see what you think. I'm waiting for my guest to come in, and here he is. Uh, 1 second. Let me add him.
Sorry about that, brother.
No, it's okay, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, just we're still kind of just getting set up.
Okay.
All right. Um, yeah, it's been a while since I did a Facebook Live, so I'm gonna give people a couple of seconds to come in here and discuss. Let me put the banner up on what we're gonna talk about. Black freedom, black freedom fighting versus black positioning in white spaces, and how do we tell the difference? This should be a very interesting conversation.
Uh, Most definitely. And this is something I saw I was interested in when you
Okay.
posed the question.
Yes, it's a. I mean, I guess we can get started, and I can always play it back later. But yeah, it's a very frustrating time right now. I mean, not just here in New York City where we live, but pretty
Mhm.
much all over the country because we've been experiencing a great deal of struggle, and a lot of black folk are feeling like their concerns just haven't been heard. We're feeling largely ignored, and a lot of animus is being directed at a lot of those who um, represent the black community, so to speak, in the mainstream media and in elected office. And the question is basically one on how do we identify the people who are truly advocating for us, the people who are truly fighting for us, and those that are really there for their own uh, personal agendas and maybe just to gain their own access to a white dominated system. Um, and how do we tell that difference? And what do we go? Where do we go from there once we can identify them?
Okay. That's a very good question. And I will tell you how you can identify it. And most Black folks can't. Uh, Anytime you hear a politician, an elected official, someone who is running for office, and if you are a Black person, and they're using buzzwords, I call them, such as all the people, minorities,
Mm.
people of color,
Hello.
poor people. Rest assured that they are leaning towards doing for more favorable groups. Either that or they're simply ignorant to the verbiage that they're using. And the reason why that is because they are continuing benign neglect policies uh, where nothing specifically will be done for Black folks. So that's one way to tell that whether or not they're serious. So you see, when you're dealing with politics and you're Black, if you're not looking to support an individual or if you are an individual who's engaged in politics and you're not looking to move the needle forward vertically for Black people, you are essentially playing at politics and you're not playing to win. Either that or you're simply looking to further your position for your own
Right.
self benefit.
Right. So so right. So we know we can pretty much identify the difference. However, there are those that would argue that in order to win it, you got to be in it. Like in order to actually get something done for black people, you really have to play the game. You have to get in there and be at the table in order to be involved in the conversation. So You know, how would you address that?
As far as being, what would I say to that?
Well, yeah, like being at the table, like, you know, because there are a lot of people that argue, well, listen, what do you guys want to do? You just want to sit back and complain? Like, we can't really do anything from the outside. And there are people who are on the inside that many of us may even look at them and call them, you know, coons or sellouts or whatever.
Mhm.
And there are those that would argue that they're getting a lot more done than we think.
Right. So, well, this is tricky to identify, and if you're not familiar with it, you won't identify. But let me keep it very simple. Um, Politics is social economic Darwinism. It is survival of the fittest. And voting is a quid pro quo, something for something. Um,
Right.
there are many individuals who are simply loitering a space, if you will, once elected, and they're in that space, and they're in politics simply to occupy the space and stay there. We all know that when you do things that are directly germane to Black folks and our issues, that scares a lot of people and it pushes people back. And automatically they will call you militant, a radical, things of that nature, and move the issues towards all the people, as I said. So dealing with individuals who are like that, and as I said, you have to look at if they're using that position to further the agenda of Black folks. Let me give you an example of who did that.
Right.
Even though he smoked crack, Marion Barry in Washington, D.C. He was an individual who was looking to move the needle forward regarding Black issues. Someone who did not do that and was a master manipulator at that was President Obama, with using ambiguous statements
Right.
to apply to all the people
Right.
and not specifically Black folks. So if you want to identify that, you have the blueprint in Obama. Just simply look at his entire run and things he said. He said that, Black folks would say that, well, what are we going to get? We were all excited. We had the first Black president. So we thinking that prosperity is going to rain upon us. And
Right.
it essentially rained. He did specific things for almost every other group
Everybody else. Yeah.
other than Black folks. One of the things, so I'm just not talking in generalities. I'll give you something very specific. So uh, the Native Americans, as we know in 1866, the Native American Treaty, that's where they got all the reservations, all the casinos,
Right.
free college tuitions, and your audience, for those who know, that was part of the deal, what they got in the 1866 Native American Treaty. Now, the Native Americans did, in fact, enslave Black folks. A lot of people don't know that. Over about 30,000 Black folks.
Yeah.
So the federal government told them that once we give you these benefits, the Black folks that you have enslaved, you are responsible for. So all of those reservations, those college tuitions, etc., Black folks are entitled to that. They were instructed to give those things to Black folks. Now they created this the quantum blood law in order to eliminate and push Black folks out from receiving those benefits. And what that rule was stating that if you could not prove your Native American heritage going back centuries, then you could not partake
Uh,
the benefits of the 1866 Native American Treaty. How was an illiterate slave going to do that? So now that I went through some of the history, okay, Barack Obama and the Native Americans cited the 1866 Native American Treaty, and Barack Obama extended those benefits that were given to them from based upon the 1866 Native American treaty. He extended all of those benefits, those college tuitions, billions of dollars, those resources, those monies,
and all based on that language, that original
based
language.
on the 1866 Native American Treaty. Now, Dr. Claude Anderson had brought in a lawsuit to his administration citing this, that if you're going to give that to those folks, Black folks are
Or
legally
entitled to. Right.
entitled to those benefits. A treaty, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is the highest legislation in the law of the land below the Constitution, is a treaty. So he ignored them. So based on that,
Wow.
that's telling you that he used that language, that law, to do something specific for Native Americans and simply ignored, because it's in the same laws, it's in the same treaty, ignore to do anything for Black folks. And people could say, no, you can't have it both ways. You can't cite something from 1866 and use it today in modern day, giving to one group, and then ignore the Black folks that were entitled to those very same benefits and say, well, that was a long time ago. Well, if that was a long time ago, then let's forget everybody and not worry about 1866, period.
Right.
But he didn't do that.
You see, I mean, we've gotten pretty good at identifying Black faces in high spaces who pretty much don't do much of anything for the Black community.
Right.
But for those people who truly are trying to move the needle for Black people, that often go unheard. And I guess in some cases they're demonized and ostracized and kind of put out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are acceptable sacrifices that people who try to navigate through this system can make in order, in the pursuit of justice for Black people, without selling out? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I've asked myself that question a lot of times. Like, you want to get things done for your people, but the way this system is set up, it's a white dominated anti-Black political system. That's just what it is. So the quandary is, how do you help your people in a system that specifically profits from hurting them?
Well, okay. Let's address the first part. What do you do that's not considered selling out? First of all, let's acknowledge that this is a compromise. We are in a white nation, and those Black folks who's watching this today, if you think differently, make no mistake about it, the Constitution was the first affirmative action plan for white folks. They were affirming their rights when this country was established. And our position as Black folks was clearly stated where we were in the Constitution. There was nothing ambiguous about it. So having said that, being Black folks who are trying to operate in a white society, I would say that anything that you can get that is vertical upward mobility is worth a sacrifice. So what does that mean? Many times we are too busy dealing in horizontal movement. Horizontal movement is using other topics such as immigration rights, poverty rights, minority rights, people of color rights, as I alluded to earlier, and just addressing those issues. That's horizontal movement. That doesn't move. That's not vertical upward mobility for Black folks. Another one is social issues. You will hear it all the time. If you had a nickel for every time you heard it, you'd probably be a millionaire of social issues for Black folks. Well, you rarely, if ever, hear a politician talk about economic issues.
That's right.
For Black people. So again, things that involve vertical movement is worth the compromise and sacrifice to supporting an agenda on an issue. Vertical movement, okay, that moves the needle forward for Black folks, not horizontal issues. They're fooling us right now in the media with this Voting Rights Act
Oh,
nonsense, with it spending so much attention on it.
they've
You
been doing that for years, brother. Like there's
and
like
so
no
many Black
other.
folks are falling for it, entertaining it. But I know that it's a bunch of nonsense. That's all it is. It's a bunch of nonsense. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And this horizontal movement, it
Uh-huh.
just kind of continues to propagate the unequal exchange, right? We're so busy spending so much time at the front lines of other
Mhm.
movements, other issues, that we really don't ever dedicate that time to ours. And even if we just positioned ourselves to, I don't know, like let's say, okay, fine, we'll show up, but we want this as well. Like you got to give us this first. You know, I just it's very hard to find Black people actually leveraging
Mhm.
their influence, no matter how small it is or how large it is.
Mhm.
And I think that's very dangerous right now
Mhm.
because if you're really trying to advocate for Black people and there's so many other tangential issues, tangential causes, how do we bring focus? Like there's no focus on it. And I think it'd be so much easier if Black people were willing to just listen to each other. But then it's hard to listen because when you see Black people who dare to speak outside of the going narrative, you know,
Ice Cube.
yeah, like we've kind of been like almost trained, like domesticated in a way, like how Dr. Cleo Monago says. It's like we're almost trained to just go on the attack for anyone who steers us away from the direction of the going narrative that is fed to us.
Well,
So
Tone, I'll tell you something. That goes back to, and you know how much I love history. That goes back to our origins in this country in the 1600s when we were brought here. So again, going down history, uh, essentially, I think there were over 200 slave revolts in America, over 200, and we know one of the most popular ones of Nat Turner.
right.
Um, every slave revolt was ended by a Black person telling
Yep.
Black people. Every single last one. And that was enforced with something called meritorious
Manumission.
manumission. And
Yep.
what meritorious manumission stated was to your audience is that the only way that a Black person could receive their freedom from slavery was either telling on
Well,
another Black person who was trying to have an uprise, a revolt, uh, inventing some sort of equipment that made a white person's life even easier. And I believe the third one was saving the life of
yeah.
a white person. So those are the things that uh, fell under what meritorious manumission is. And your audience might be saying, well, that was back then. Well, we have modern day
Meritorious
meritorious
manumission.
manumission.
The trinkets.
Yes, where you have individuals who would purport to represent the interests of Black folks, and they
Mhm.
are rewarded for sometimes doing things to stop the forward, upward mobility of Black folks,
Mhm.
and they benefit their own self interest by not doing for Black folks. So at the end of the day, granted, it's not telling on a Black person because of the slave revolt, but make no mistake about it. If you can defer resources from Black communities and helping Black folks, make no mistake about it. That's meritorious manumission because it
Right.
would benefit Black folks and you are conscious in what you're doing to not, help Black folks.
And to even keep them, I guess, pacified, under
Oh,
control,
no doubt about it.
keep them managed.
No doubt about it. I get extremely frustrated, but I try to channel that anger when I watch television and I see these pseudo pundits on TV or given a pulpit where they're speaking on issues that they simply don't, they either don't know what they're talking about, they're either ignorant to the issues, or they are aware of the issues and they simply don't care. I was looking at, well, I won't call out their names, but I looked at several programs where I'm looking at these individuals and they have no idea what they're talking about because they don't know the history and how this works. So let me tell you something. This is a competitive race-based society. People don't like to believe that. They don't like to say it. The social construct on race doesn't allow for equal footing. And
That's
white
right.
privilege or white supremacy, that's structural, okay? And whether you acknowledge it or you don't acknowledge it, so whether it's conscious or subconscious, the socioeconomic outcomes are foreordained by race.
Yes.
Now, when you tell that to some people, that hurts, that stings. And they'll tell you, no, don't say that. That sounds horrible. But this is what it is. This is what it is. So you have to understand, we have to understand that this is a competition. And if we're all we've got, Black folks. If we are not on the same team to push our agenda forward as Black folks first, we're going to lose. We have this. So we got to identify exactly how this game is played. And every other race, ethnic group understands exactly how this works, except for us.
Yep. I agree.
Racism is a team sport.
Yeah.
Dr. Gordon told us you either play as a team or you lose by default.
Yeah.
And
even this competitive system that we talk about, we're not even really competing. We're not really competing with other groups. We're like competing with each other. And that kind of keeps us at like where we are because we see so much competition.
Expand on that. Competing.
Well, meaning that when you're relegated to a certain position, a certain socioeconomic position in society, right? Where in many factors in many senses, you may not even be a factor, unfortunately, as compared to other groups. So the only competition that you see is someone else who looks like you, who's trying to get a leg up. And I think that kind of becomes sort of a problem, especially within our community. Like when as it comes to like the mindset that we always have, like there has to be only one. There's only one person that can occupy that position at a time. Yeah. But that's also propagated by the media and this political system. They always make room for just one or two in a way of kind of conditioning us to this mindset that there's not enough space for all of us.
Absolutely. You are 1000% correct. That has been our plight historically, and that is our plight today. And again, I know that the things you say, I know that the things that I say, Black folks don't want to hear it or they're shocked by it, but I have to be honest. And again, if you look at the history, something that everyone can relate to and understand is Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson, I'm not saying that Jackie Robinson wasn't brave or had to endure racial epithets, while he was playing for the Dodgers. But make no mistake about it, Jackie Robinson was a sellout. And the reason why he was a sellout is because the Negro Leagues were one of the most thriving businesses in America, grossing approximately $2 million a year at that time. So remember, when you think of a baseball team, you're thinking of this team supporting a community, jobs for vendors,
Right, right,
managers,
right.
players, bat boys. Think of the money that's being generated in the community. And one Negro said, I want to leave the
This
group and I want to go compete in white baseball by myself. Now, Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson and all of those other blacks, they actually found their nose. What Jackie Robinson could have done was stay with black folks, and we could have integrated together where everyone kept all of those jobs. Everyone kept all of that money. So essentially, everyone was getting the bag. So by Jackie Robinson going to white baseball, that was one of the dominoes that ended the Negro Leagues. And then when you look at that, black folks are the only people that look at it and they see Jackie Robinson or they see
it was an accomplishment.
right. And you
Right.
look, if you look in the stands, black people are the only ones that says, you know, oh, they letting niggas into the stadium. Black
Right.
folks don't go and say, well, we got our own stadium, let's build our stuff. They look at that one black person in that seat and they go, I want his seat. What you just said, I want that seat right there.
True.
I want that nigga is sitting right there.
But
And
we've been victim to like a huge mind F. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, just look at it. That's kind of like the byproduct of desegregation anyway. Like it's always been this desire, this need to be included in white society. And just like how we talk about the Negro Leagues, we can talk about just black wealth in our own communities. Like honestly, like Jim Crow era in the 60s and all that, black folks were kind of doing it themselves because we were relegated to our own communities where we had our own barbershops, we had our own doctors' offices. Everything was pretty much intra-community because we were pretty much in that position. But once we got to desegregation, everybody kind of left and was like, I don't got to do business here in my community no more. I could go to the white folks now. They'll let me in. I could go to their restaurants. I can go to their venues. I can go to their movie theaters and forget y'all. So we kind of abandoned our economic, system.
We didn't kind of. We did.
We completely abandoned it.
We didn't kind of. We did. But you want to you want to be careful when you say desegregation because there's a difference between desegregation and integration.
Integration.
Right. They're not one and the same.
Right, we integrated. It was integrating into white society. Right. Exactly. I only use the language of desegregation because that was the going term, at the time. Desegregating.
Well, desegregating is not a bad thing. Desegregating simply means that you want those same equal resources that the white folks were getting that we were not getting. As far as a punishment of being segregated. So when you say desegregated, I just want the money. I just want the money to be able to do for me and mine. I don't want integration and be forced to mix with white folks. You see, that's we all know that 1954 Brown versus the Board of Ed was the final decision that integration in schools that allowed it. But something that people are not aware of is the 1953 Briggs versus Elliott decision out of South Carolina. And the difference between those issues were they simply wanted equal resources. They didn't want to be around white folks. They didn't care about that. So they went to the Supreme Court and were demanding equal resources. And South Carolina legislation actually went ahead and was willing to give them the money. And they said, okay, yes. They said, okay, we're going to give you the money. No problem. We're going to give you the same funding that white schools get. But you know what happened? Once
Oh
again, go
no.
back to that Jackie Robinson issue.
Oh
Thurgood
man.
Marshall and the NAACP stepped in and they said, no, 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 no. We don't want the money. Integration is the key and the answer. So they
Wait, what?
rejected. Yes, yes. See, this is when I talk about the history
I
that
gotta look.
we
Yeah, I
have
never
to
knew about
understand
that.
how we got. So 1953, Briggs versus Elliott preceded 1954, Brown versus Board of Ed. So when South Carolina said, okay, we're going to give you the money, and the NAACP and Thurgood Marshall and others said, no, 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 no. Integration has to be the key. That's what we're going to make the staple. We're rejecting that. We want full integration. And the lack of foresight that they had, all that simply meant was that you are now putting black children in closer proximity to
To the
white
people that
children,
hate them.
indoctrinating them into white society. All
Yeah.
the black schools closed, okay? All the guidance counselors lost their job, the janitors, the teachers, the administrators, everyone lost their job. All the schools closed, and they bust all of those black kids out of their neighborhoods to white kids. Now,
So we just shut down our entire economic and educational
we
system.
shut down everything. Now, black folks, we keep celebrating this, and we don't know the history. And
Yeah.
you have people with PhDs and master degrees that are going on CNN and all these things celebrating this as if it is a good thing, but they're not telling you the
How
true
it destroyed
history
your own community.
and the effects. And that Brown versus Board of Ed decision was probably one of the worst decisions. So when black folks come to me and they say, well, what are you saying, that segregation was a good thing? No, I'm saying that we were worried about equal benefits,
Right.
resources. That's what our concerns were. And they forced integration down our throat. Martin Luther King and others did. That's why he made the statement.
That he felt like he was integrating his people into a burning house.
And people don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
This is why he made the statement.
Yeah.
Not specifically this issue, but all of these things that are germane to the topic. So we don't know the history.
And because we don't know the history, we continue this endless cycle. We keep repeating these same mistakes to wind up at that point of realization. But when we wind up at that point of realization, it's too late. This is what keeps happening.
Yes.
And then we get shut. And now in this day and age of massive censorship and silencing of voices, like this is even more dangerous now.
So I got to tell you, it is absolutely you just want to bang your head against the wall sometimes, because I know how it's going to end up going down this road.
Right, because you study history.
Right. How do I know? Because it's only happened
how many times already?
You know, and you got people that'll tell you, no, 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 no. You know, what are you talking about? They'll absolutely get mad and call you, you know, every name in the book. They'll call you every name in the book. And while you're telling them, while you know what's going to happen, Carl Sagan, the astronomer, actually speaks about that. He has a quote where he talks about what happens when you give a charlatan power over you, and paraphrasing, essentially he's saying that, you know, when you're lied to, you essentially become so captivated with the lie.
Right.
And it becomes too painful to admit to yourself that you've been lied
and deceived. That's right.
So the bamboozle takes over.
Yes.
And once you
depend on it.
Power over you, you essentially almost never get it back. If you and I speaking like this, but when I talk to black folks like this, they are just so in shock and so defensive and angry
that they refuse
They
to take the
refuse.
information.
They will call me divisive. They
Yes,
call me every ad hominem you can think of, but they will
without dealing
never
with the actual topic at hand.
actual issue that is rooted in proof, in evidence, with context
Yeah,
and perspective. And
that's my life, brother.
and they don't
Listen,
like that.
people
And
today have fact allergies. I just it's like it's called. I just call it fact allergies. Everyone's averse to any type of new information that can maybe reframe the narrative that they've been playing in their mind for so long. When have we become so averse to new information? When have we gotten to this point where we just refuse to hear anything that can even be quite valuable to us? That we've grown so dependent upon lies that we're just completely unwilling to hear any inconvenient truth that maybe it maybe questions your your decision making ability a little bit. But I mean, is it that hard for us to accept that?
that's why we don't grow as a people. If you're not meant to feel uncomfortable and accountable for what's happening with yourself as a person, that's how you grow. And if you're not willing to do that, you don't grow. You stay in the same exact positions where you are. And you know that you've had guests on in the past to refute the hubris attitudes of some individual that have programs. They are regurgitating the same old failed ideas and policies, and the new generation is saying, "No, let's do something different."
Right.
And they did the display of hubris, of arrogance, to think that,
Hostility.
how dare you
Yeah.
even question what we're doing? And I just flat out say it. Roland Martin did it.
Mm.
Roland Martin did it. And you know, it's how dare you? You know,
But
but it's unfortunate.
but I think the social media, the media,
Mm.
society in general, it creates this environment where everyone is right, no matter what they say. Like everything is your truth. I
Yes,
don't like,
yeah, I love that one.
yeah, it doesn't matter what you
My
say.
truth.
It's
I love
my
it.
truth.
Yeah, my truth.
Therefore, you can't refute anything that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Everyone is infallible. Everyone is a professor. Everybody knows anything. And if you offer people even just a tad bit of common sense or
Mhm.
critical thinking, what
Mhm.
do? They'll they'll try to credentialize themselves and say, well, or listen, well, this authority said this, so you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Follow the science or follow whatever it is that I believe, even though you're offering me all this evidence to refute what I'm saying to you. And the thing to me is like, how do we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result? Now, that's insanity to me.
Well, that's the definition of insanity.
Right. So we're living right now in an era of insanity. Have we all gone insane?
Well, that's not only does it seem insanity today. Oh, I have to preface this. I'm not a Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal. I don't care. I'm for black folks. But what you see what the Democrats are doing is their attempt to expand censorship. And that speaks to what you're talking about. So if anything you're saying doesn't go along with their narrative, and that's what Joe Biden's whole thing is with expanding the Voting Rights Act. This is the whole thing that they're highlighting the disturbance, because that's what it was in the Capitol, that no one really cares about, except that they are highlighting that because that is, and I'm not saying that I agree with what was done in the Capitol. I'm not saying that.
Right.
That's besides the point. I'm simply saying that they are focusing on it, comparing it to 9/11, where there is no comparison for a way to attempt to expand
A
censorship.
surveillance state. And
Right. on everyone. So you have to read between the lines. You have to see exactly what's going on, and that the reasonable, I like to call them the adults in the room, are being silenced. We're called kooks, quacks, radicals, when we're just presenting evidence. And as you said, the other individuals who would say, I want to tell my truth, I don't even know what that means. There's only the truth, are given a pulpit
to drown you out.
To drown you out. And this is what we're seeing more and more today. Make no mistake about it, the radical censorship is not just a far right ideology. It can also come from the far left. Make no mistake about it. It can.
Well, I've seen it. I've always seen it coming, honestly, from the left, to be honest. And I'm not partisan in any way. But when it comes to censorship, I mean, if there's one thing I know about conservatives today, they like to run their mouth. They like their opinions to be heard. But what's interesting to me is that, we're under a Democrat administration. Everything is supposed to be liberal, right? Progressives, liberal, but never in a time in my life have I ever seen our society under such authoritarian rule and policies, especially to the point where let's even forget the Democratic Party. I'm talking about liberals themselves who are overtly calling for their freedoms to be taken away from them. They're calling for mandates. They're shaming people and being hostile with people who refuse to submit to the state. Like, I never thought that I'd ever see a day like what I'm seeing right now. And the most troubling part of this for me is that Black people, I really feel I'm disappointed and I'm terrified, because it seems that we're always following behind white liberal politics and policies that always end up harming us the most. We continue to try to identify with them and their concerns without realizing that their concerns really aren't in any way congruent to ours. So in the end, we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. I mean, even look at censorship. Who is the most censored group of people in the United States when it comes to social media and anywhere else?
Right.
Black people who tell the truth.
Right.
So how can we be the ones that are some of the loudest voices that are calling for censorship and celebrating it? When I saw Donald Trump get censored, when they shut him down, I was like, oh no. First of all, they could do that to a president. What do you think they could do to your black ass?
I mean, listen, this is you mentioned about liberals and us wanting to follow the narrative of liberals. James Baldwin had cited this in an interview, and it's just fascinating how the same things that applied back then are so relevant today. And what James Baldwin had said was, so as it pertains to the Negro or Black folks getting equity, there is this tacit relationship or requirement from white liberals in that we should define our standards and judgments based on what they have said.
Yes. And what they're comfortable with.
And if we were to develop our own standards and judgments, they fear that we would use those standards and judgments against them.
And why is that?
Well, we know why that is.
Right.
Because it's just power. It's not about Democrat or Republican, that's neither here nor there. And if that isn't relevant today, if that isn't prevalent today, I don't know what is. I'm going to tell you something, and I'm going to try to keep it not too controversial, but such a thing must be said. Anytime you hear Black folks align those other views of, or excuse me, not views, but other issues of immigration, okay? Because when I say that Black folks who are immigrants, understand this.
Right.
When they say immigration,
they ain't talking
about you.
That's right.
They're not talking about Black folks from Black countries of origin.
When they're advocating for immigrants,
right.
they're not talking about you. Right. So when they chasing them out, they talking about you.
Right. Don't think that, oh, wait a minute, I don't like this guy. I'm Black too. We all Black. No. Make no mistake about it. And I'll get to that later because I don't want to blur the lines. But they're not talking about you.
Right.
But if you have a situation here where they're talking about immigration, LGBTQ, okay, people of color, Native Americans, and all these things, those issues are not necessarily the standards that Black people have. Because here's the thing, Black folks are traditionally conservative people.
Been saying that forever. That's right.
We are traditionally conservative people. So those issues are not ours. So people who are listening to this, I cited LGBTQ, and you may not like what I said, but let me tell you something. I tell friends of mine who are LGBTQ community, I says, listen, pay attention. Stop associating, and I'm not saying that we don't have our issues in our community. I'm not saying. Stop associating your issues with LGBTQ. Why? Because you don't get what you don't get in this country because of your sexual orientation. You don't get what you don't get because you're Black. So the last time I checked, there are a bunch of gay, white, trans lawyers, officials who are doing just fine economically. You don't get what you don't get because you're Black. So stop allowing those others to use you to give their fabricated oppression substance. James Baldwin was gay. You have never heard James Baldwin identify himself with being a gay man and gay rights. He has identified with being a Black man and needing economic equity as a Black man. So those individuals who are LGBTQ, you are my brothers and sisters. Come get on board with what the Black folks are doing. We can sort out our issues on our own in our community. Okay.
And I would also say stop allowing yourselves to be used as well, because they're being used to dilute and water down the real issues that Black people face, right? And it's not like there's a genuine effort to improve the lives of LGBTQ and feminists and whoever else, because we're still under an oppressive system that still props up a certain economic group, a certain people with a certain wealth status over the rest of us. So I just think that it's easier to control a population when you keep them fragmented and kind of, I don't know, just arguing amongst each other, and when you create the confusion. I mean, but this system does also, the engine that drives this system though is the oppression of Black people. And I think
that's always been the engine that drives. Tone, you can argue with them. You can argue amongst yourself. You just got to get the bag first. If you look at the Jews and what they were doing, this is a perfect example. Jews tried to split up and be fragmented in the 1500s, and it damn near wiped them out as a people. And then they understood that they had to work together. Now
For a
you look
collective
at
interest, right?
right now you look at again where they almost did it, and part of the reason why they left Europe was because, well, let's rewind for a minute. Part of the reason why the Nazis viewed them the way they did, and I'm not saying, I want to be perfectly clear, I'm not saying that they were right in what they did. Of course not. Absolutely not. But why the reason why they did what they did is because the Jews were very selfish. They were very greedy. They were fighting amongst themselves a little bit, and they had a lot. They had more than everyone else. And when the Nazis were looking to blame someone after the war, they said, well, let's blame this group. Now, here's one thing that the Jews understood. They understood that we needed our own sovereign nation and we had to stick together. And that's exactly when Israel was established. Israel
Yep.
was established right after World War II, and right after those horrific events had
Yep.
happened to them. They established Israel. And when they were being discriminated against and people hated them, they understood that we had to stick together as a group and we had to acquire wealth and economic prosperity. And economic wealth and prosperity did they ever acquire? Now
Yep.
they fight
And
amongst
sovereignty.
themselves, but
Yep.
they got the bag.
Yep.
They got it. Jews will fight amongst themselves all day long, but let you or someone else say something that they even deem or hint at anti-Semite, you will have every single Jew banding together coming after you. They'll be like, what happened? Well, anti-Semite. And then they'll look at you after the fact saying, what he said, what he said. Okay,
Yep.
right. They won't even know, but they stick together. And it's kind of admirable if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very admirable.
What's up, Dre?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, Dre, this is Brother Kaya. I don't know if you guys have been on a live before.
I don't think so.
With each other. Yeah, Dre's a very intelligent young man. So I don't know. I guess you've been watching the conversation, or
no, I haven't. I just jumped on just like maybe a few seconds ago.
Okay, yeah, we've been kind of covering a bunch of issues, but you see, the original topic was Black freedom fighting versus Black positioning in white spaces. And Kaya, yeah, we did kind of go all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But one area I did want to kind of jump back into was how to respond to intentionally ignorant Black people that many of us often refer to them as coons, right? Like people that they get on these public platforms and they basically make a minstrel show out of Blackness and out of our struggle. And you see a lot of them on the conservative side, like the Republican side. I forgot that guy's name. The Black guy that is it Jesse Lee Peterson?
Jesse Lee Peterson, yeah.
Is that his name?
Yeah, the old the pastor. Alleged pastor.
Yeah, like you have Jesse Lee Peterson, and you have now Candace Owens. She's very intelligent, but we also know her agenda, right? And so, how do you publicly respond to distractive, intentionally ignorant Black people and purposely obtuse whites who try to steer the narrative away from substantive conversation about Black progress?
In my opinion, speaking a little bit to that, it's extremely difficult to speak to the Black ones who are purposefully ignorant because they're just completely arguing in bad faith. And it's almost impossible to defeat somebody in a bad faith argument when they're just arguing a point that they know is completely untrue, but they have some sort of hidden motivation behind that. But to speak to the point of arguing with the disingenuous white ones, a lot of times I find from like doing Clubhouse, those type of groups and stuff like that, if you get them talking, they usually start to reveal more and more of where they just have open white supremacist views as long as you keep them talking, is what I've discovered a lot.
Kaya, I know you and I were talking about this the other day, right? And you use Malcolm X as an example,
right?
When we were talking about how to respond to certain, let's say, ignorance, especially when speaking publicly, when engaging publicly for like true like progress for Black people?
Mhm.
Maybe you can highlight that.
Well, myself, and I've learned over the years, and I've grown. I don't.
Uh-oh. Hello? Wait. Is he breaking up for me or
Yeah, he broke up for me also.
Kaya? Are you there? Uh-oh. I think it's internet. I don't know.
Yeah, he's frozen on my screen.
After you logged in, I don't know what happened. But we're good now?
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Okay. So what I was saying is that honestly, I used to.
Oh, you're breaking up. Hold on. Hold on. Kaya?
Yeah.
Okay. You're kind of pixelated. I don't know. Check your Wi-Fi connection on your
I
laptop.
don't know. All of a sudden, when you added another person on, it just changed.
Oh wait, I hear you now.
I have full bar.
No, you're there. You're
Okay.
back now.
So
Okay,
I don't know
sorry.
when you added on the third person, it just changed. Okay. So what I was saying is that I don't really entertain it because I just think it's a waste of time, and the reason why is because we know that there's nothing that they could provide as far as evidence for their point. We know that. So why even waste time? You'll find that if you engage with them, you'll get away from what you wanted to do, what your point was, and staying on task and on goal. So what we spoke about is you saw with Brother Malcolm, who was an absolute master in being like a white Malcolm.
He froze. Is it me?
No, he froze on mine as well. Maybe if I drop it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we-
I don't know why. Ever since you added a third person
Let me see.
to lose you.
Yeah, good. Try again. But you're definitely
Okay.
pixelated. You've been pixelated for a little while, but go ahead.
Okay, maybe I should
No, I hear you.
leave this space just to. Maybe I should leave this space. Can you turn that on? A little bit better.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, please. So what I was saying was
Oh yeah, much
I
better.
don't indulge in those things because it's a waste of time. And you'll find that you'll just get distracted in just those side issues that mean nothing. And when you're talking about really what's germane to the topic, Malcolm was a master at dealing with white moderators who'd like to pit him against other Sambo Negroes and essentially have them go at it. Malcolm would always just sort of bypass them and then shut them down by addressing the questions that he knew that they were going to ask after that. So he wouldn't even have bothered. So I've grown and learned how to deal with that. And if I'm on a panel or an interview, I don't even engage in the back and forth with those type of individuals. It's a waste of time.
Right. But whenever you're placed in a position to have to engage in those discussions, because unfortunately, as long as we're kind of reliant upon these, mainstream corporate media platforms in order to have a voice, or even social media where everybody, you got to deal with people who like are influencers or people, the blue checks, where it's like you're only allowed these certain spaces to have a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but they got to come with certain conditions. You got to You got to deal with a lot of the nonsense. So I guess, you know, you can dismiss a lot of the foolishness to a degree, but I also think that we still have to address it. Like, you got to answer it. That's the unfortunate, you know, byproduct of that, because when people spread too much ignorance, there are people who will listen to it. There are people who are going to absorb it. So I think that we still have, you know, an unpleasant responsibility to still push back to a certain degree with intelligence, but not to allow people to dwell on it, and still be able to push forward with our conversation, with what we want to be stated, or, you know, what we want to be heard, because we're always going to be faced with distractive nonsense whenever it comes to Black people trying to speak up on behalf of other Black people. It's just this obstacle that's always tossed in our way. But that again goes to the whole necessity of us building our own platforms. You know, I just did a video today where I was really expressing the need for us to abandon mainstream media in all forms, including social media, because social media has become mainstream media and it's acting as an extension or a tentacle of this government. Like, we're
Right.
not allowed to use our own voices at all. And, you know, if you also think about it, people are monetizing social media. So we're becoming very dependent upon this medium just to survive and you know, to achieve wealth. So just based on that, and when it's so heavily regulated, it kind of leads people to want to kind of mute their authentic voices anyway, right? So that's why it's important that if we truly care about creating a better world, or making room for different perspectives and truth, we have to create and invest in independent media sources to free ourselves from this stronghold.
I agree with you 100%. I have, I'm so past, and just a minute. I respect exactly what you have done in building your own platform, um, to tell the truth, on what's going on and not depend upon others. So I applaud you for that. I am in 100% agreement with us building our own, um, platform to express our own standards, our own judgments, which is why I will usually almost always support Black platforms that are on social media. And we have seen many groups such as the Manosphere, that has grown tremendously. So
Right.
that's a necessity that is, going to help move the needle forward, and having
Right.
us think more from a cerebral perspective and not so much an emotional perspective on, you know, what we see, um, with these ulterior motives, as you said, on CNN and these other mainstream media outlets. I mean, I had
Right.
to realize, I had to understand that I used to partake in watching these programs, and then I had to see that it's a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense. It's absolutely nothing. So, um, I know I was a little bit verbose, but in terms of addressing those individuals who would look to, um, distract us from on being on task, I present my case based on the evidence. I always use history. I always use, and you can see that from tonight. I always use history, and I'm simply, taking the events and presenting them to you. So I don't really have to argue with an individual who says something. If Black folks would like to think, for example, that Abraham Lincoln freed them and gave them prosperity, I simply use his own memoirs,
Right.
how he felt about Black people. These are his words, not mine. And I'll simply tell him, you know, give him the dates when the Civil War happened and when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, you know, the South wasn't underneath the Union. So how could he have any, authority over a group of rogue states that seceded from the Union. So it's impossible that he could have freed any black person. So just, I don't even argue with them. Just here's the evidence. Here it is for yourself. And then they tend to get quiet, or they'll just deflect,
Right.
or throw an ad hominem. And then
Right.
you got them. You know that there's nothing, because they have nothing to say after that. So I don't really get caught up in that.
Yeah, but I mean, I appreciate what you said about me trying to build this platform, and what's
No,
crazy
you are.
is,
You're not trying. You are. You are.
well, yeah, I guess, but unfortunately, I've become victim to the censorship and the throttling down of my account and things like that. So it's like I never really know how many people are watching. You know what I'm saying? So I've been forced to kind of go to other platforms. Like it's funny, like TikTok, I'll put up a video and it'll get tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of views and engagement and interactions. But when I come to Facebook, it's like what, 15, 20 views.
Right.
And it wasn't like that, like say 6 months ago. Well, it wasn't like that before the pandemic.
Right.
And the more I started to speak up, speak common sense and truth, I'll call anti-science, or I was, misinformation. And, I just think that's been very eye-opening. And it wasn't just that. I mean, it's been before that. I remember back when they suspended, when they permanently removed the account of Minister Louis Farrakhan. When I saw that, and then they tried to, they got rid of Alex Jones as a little, placebo, but you know what they're doing. And that's why I think we really need to get off of these platforms, or detach. We have to find a way of detaching from them. And I get it, people are making money on it, but if we do not invest in building alternative media now, more of it, and support it, I'm afraid that the entire media experience, whether it be social media, news media, and even entertainment, is going to be something where we're trapped in one narrow view that is permitted, and that's it. And that's when we just pretty much become machines. We're tools.
Well, 1985 all over. 1984 all over again. But I'll tell you this: I try to find the silver lining. I traditionally, you watch MSNBC, CNN, ABC, Fox News, and what they were saying, or whatever pundits they had on, that's what it was. But I will certainly say that, maybe the last 5 to 10 years,
we've been reading through the bullshit.
Right. And granted, it's not perfect, and we do have problems with censorship here. But I certainly must have to say that creations of the manosphere or other social media platforms has allowed for an alternative voice. So it's
to
not
the
perfect.
traditional mainstream media.
Right. It's not perfect. It certainly isn't. And
It's
it's
far from
annoying
perfect, brother.
to be censored. But look, whether you like him or whether you don't, Kevin is out there, and he's made a big difference. On his
Kevin Samuels, you mean?
Right. He's made a huge difference on his platform by awakening a lot of black men in realizing what's going on. Now you got some clowns out there like Fresh and Fit or others, who I wouldn't necessarily agree with what they're pushing, but at the end of the day, they're being given the opportunity. They're given the platform to change the narrative a little bit.
I agree, but that's some people, and that's the problem I have, because while there are great benefits, I see, you see from social media, how much benefit is it really when it transmogrifies right back into what we've been getting from mainstream media? Because we see mainstream corporate media pretty much taking over social media through our government, because we know that that corporate media, let's stop saying mainstream because it's white media. You know what I'm saying? Corporate media acts as a tentacle of this government, and social media has been getting out of control, so to speak, and it has to be tampered down. And I see it being tampered down when independent media platforms were getting like astronomical views, getting more views than CNN and MSNBC and all those other platforms. You know what happened? They started getting flagged. They started getting throttled down. They started getting their account suspended and deplatformed to make room for MSNBC, CNN, Fox, NBC. Now, all of those mainstream corporate media platforms, they're now on social media, getting all of the views and the ads and the monetization. So it's a big machine that still is being used to control our voices. So for me, when you're still dealing with these huge corporate entities, what we may sometimes see as freedom and these new bright opportunities, it really isn't what we think it is, because we're always sold a bill of goods with some shiny shit. You know what I'm saying? I would rather that we utilize this space to build and create our own platforms. Like Isaac Hayes' son, he's building a social media platform called Fanbase, right? Like I would just love to support, especially any black media, because that's just what it is. But I just think we need to at least start detaching ourselves and pursuing the other alternative options that are out there and start supporting them. Because I look at it like this: what happens if one day they decide to just flip the switch? What now?
Well,
they did it already. Remember when Facebook shut down?
IG shut down and Facebook shut down.
Yeah. Well, I remember that day when it happened. I put up a tweet and I was like, you know what? They're using this is the opportunity. This is it. This is the point where they're going to use this to clean up all of the mess, because they were under investigation from Congress, and they're going to start deplatforming a hell of a load of people. They're going to start throttling down the content, and they're going to start censoring. And what happens since then? Like, nobody gets any type of streaming on Facebook anymore. Like, it's an entirely different platform. So,
well, I'll tell you something, Tone. I certainly can't say that you're wrong in what you're saying, but that goes back to what I said about staying on task.
Right.
If that's what they're doing, then that's what they're doing. But the work that we're doing,
It's gonna have to speak for itself.
we're still reaching Black
Right.
folks. We're still reaching who we need to reach. So if that's what they're going to do until we have another option, then
keep doing what we're doing.
I have to keep it on.
That's right, brother.
You know, I can't. It's already you know, our head is already going to explode just being black and dealing with the stuff that we deal with. So I certainly can't get distracted and be like, well, what if they do this? What if they do that? And how they throttle it down? Look, I have to keep pushing. I have to keep going, you know, because I know where I am. I'm in America. I know where I'm in. I don't ever forget that. Not only that, I'm a black man
in America. That's right.
So
right. And that's why, you know me, I'm going to continue to use my voice. And I've always said, if I even reach one person, then I feel I've done my job. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to keep doing everything that I'm doing until they remove me. But I also believe in being prepared and planning ahead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, listen, lastly, I'd just like to say, black folks, when you go out and you vote, okay, first of all, we have to understand that voting is a tool. It is not a panacea to all of our problems and issues. So don't believe that when they tell you, well, you don't get anything because you don't vote. Okay, it is a tool to put you in a position to now begin to address your problems. When we go out and vote, the only reason why you're voting is to support a candidate, whether they be black, white, Republican, Democrat, who is going to do the will of you and your people economically, security, safety. There's no other reason to support a person, a candidate, a political person who's running for office. This is a competition, and you are looking to cement or change your position of your people. So just understand that. Don't feed into the rhetoric of voting rights acts, filibuster, all of those issues that are not germane to your problems as a black person in America. If it doesn't change your position economically,
That's right.
it won't matter. And when you're looking to get something, if you cannot deposit it in the bank and it is tangible, quantifiable, it don't mean nothing. So don't listen to those social victories that you're getting. They mean much of nothing. And they're not
Right.
going to change your predicament. Okay, so just understand that.
Right. So, and I guess we need to become less attached to the feel good moments and the symbolism that is often offered to us as a replacement for tangible policies and real economic progress for our people. So if they're not talking about economics and they're not talking about like tangibly changing the lives of you, your community, your children, and you don't really see anything that you're getting out of it, there's really nothing to celebrate. Like we don't
There's
need
nothing, I
Black
don't
Lives.
even, what are you going to talk about?
Man, I don't need a
What's
Black
going
Lives Matter street painted,
on?
across the country. I don't need black
Harriet Tubman
faces,
on money.
black faces on currency. I all of that is nice, but none of that is a replacement for policy. And I think black people, we've been devoid of policy for way too long in this country. It's time to change that. We had a unique opportunity, I believe, this last presidential election to make a real statement and utilize a certain amount of leverage, but we dropped the ball on that. And that was largely at the behest of white liberals who were right there with that battery in our back.
I don't think we ever picked the ball up. I don't think we ever were holding the ball.
Damn, that's tragic to say, but
I mean that listen, when you look at these issues and you're talking about it from a political landscape, the problem, I would say, and always has been historically, it is the black bourgeoisie, the black middle class, the black professionals who refuse to actually do anything that's going to move the needle forward for black folks. It's not really about, they like to blame the young folks. It's not really about the young people. Because if you look at everything, the events that led up to the election, the rioting, the death of George Floyd, that was the youth. Now, whether you agree or disagree with this civil unrest and their disturbance, whether or not you agree or disagree, it garnered the attention of America. It garnered the attention of CNN, of MSNBC, of everyone. Everyone in the country garnered the attention. And once everyone got the attention, enters bourgeoisie blacks. And now that they are here, they're doing nothing. And they went out and told everybody, you need to support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And they started showing all those old videos of the 60s blacks.
I believe that was for, and that, from my perspective, that seemed like more from an angle of trying to preserve their positioning and not letting these rambunctious young people screw it all up for us. You know what I'm saying?
Screw it all up for us. Well, that's what I said earlier. They are loitering a space.
Yes.
They're just
Yes.
loitering a space. So, you look at things, and I asked a friend of mine, since the death of George Floyd, I think Biden said something with George Floyd's death has been more
Oh,
impactful than
then Martin
Martin
Luther
Luther
King.
King. So I would simply ask, from a visual perspective, and simply having technology and information flow faster and
Right.
freely, well, obviously, because we didn't have the
Right.
internet with everyone with a camera. So if you're talking about it from that perspective, well, no, duh, Joe, that's obvious. But if we're talking about as far as policy, well, I'd simply ask how.
In no way did it. I mean, they didn't even pass that George Floyd
Didn't even get
police
that
reform bill.
passed.
Yeah.
I just, from a visual standpoint,
That was
okay.
the largest display of empty symbolism. And that's the crazy thing for me. That was the largest display of empty symbolism, political symbolism with no benefit ever. That's
And
what
black
I saw.
and black, when you say this to black folks, all you have to do is ask the question. I don't
What did we
argue.
get?
How? I'm listening. Tell me.
What
How?
we marched in the streets with hand in hand with white people? No, what did we get? What changed?
Nothing. Asian people got more than we did. And
Yeah, and they're victim of
they
hate
piggyback
crimes,
what was happening.
and
They got real legislation.
Asian people are victims of hate crimes at less than 1/11th the rate of black people in this country.
As I said, Tom, over 60% of the hate crimes in this country are committed against black people. Over
Yeah.
60% of the hate crimes, if you do not believe me, you can
Yeah.
go on the FBI website
Brother,
and you can check the
I've
statistics
looked. I
yourself.
agree.
Over
Black people are victims of hate crimes at twice the rate of whites and at 11 times the rate of Asians.
But
And
you
Asian
wouldn't hear
people
that.
are victims of hate crimes less than the category of other. So you got
So,
whites, blacks, Hispanics, other, and then Asians.
so it is
Unbelievable.
essentially, it is criminal. It is criminal. It is offensive to pass legislation over black people that's here. Listen, I've always said this. Everyone has a right to advocate, fight for whatever their issues are. Do you? But all I'm saying is you can't skip the line. You can't go ahead of me. So I'm not going to support these ideas or these statements that you're equating others to us, or we're
Right.
a
So right. They
nation
can't skip the
of
line with
right.
you supporting them.
We,
Right. With you being a part of that.
right. We
Right.
can't do that. We're not going to play that game. We're not going to play the game of pretending that everyone has equally contributed to the building of this nation. You have people that are coming here for unearned benefits. And I'm
But this
sorry,
country was built by immigrants.
yeah, well, that
Uncle Joe
everybody
says
knows.
that.
No, that's the biggest lie ever told. Half the people coming through Ellis Island were ignorant, illiterate, worthless. So when they talk about give me your tired, give me your poor, give me your huddle, give me your masses, yeah, well, that should have been talking about black folks because we were the tired, poor, huddled masses
That
in
actually
this
built the
country,
country.
building this country.
Yep.
And once again, immigrants, black folks, you better not get offended by this because how many black folks you seen coming through the gates of Ellis Island? I asked that. None.
None.
Why? Because it was a zero quota on black immigration. You weren't allowed to come here. And the
Right.
black folks that were here were slaves.
I don't think they started letting black immigrants come into like the
Into the
60s, like the
1960s.
late 60s or something after the civil. Yeah.
And they changed the laws. But not only did they change the laws, now get this. Now, this is why this is relevant to this day now. So, how they changed the laws, they said, okay, well, we had a zero quota on black immigration. So, how they calculate how many immigrants and which immigrants that come into this country is they said that we're going to take it based upon the historical number of your ancestors coming here. And that's how they calculate what immigrants are allowed from what countries to come into America. So obviously, if there was a zero quota on Black immigration for 100 years prior to that, who do you think is going to be at the lowest clip on who they allow to come to this country? That's why you'll never see a group of 20,000 Black folks coming
Oh
here.
man.
And you ain't never going to see it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you seen what happened when them Haitians came over the border.
You man, brother, I know we talking about so many topics, but that happens because Haiti, the reason why that happens is because Haiti was the first nation to revolt
defeat,
against,
yeah.
and defeat a white slave nation. And Haiti has, excuse me,
they've been paying for it ever since.
punished. They've been paying for it ever since. Haiti is isolated, or at the time was isolated in the Western Hemisphere of Black nations. So before, you know, as of free Black nations at that time, it wasn't nothing around there. What other Black country was around there?
Yep.
Nothing. That was free.
Right.
That was free. None.
Damn.
So they punished them and they put a stranglehold on them.
Yeah,
and
they gave them a big fat bill that they couldn't pay.
Right.
And,
it was I forgot what doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine stated that any other country who supports a country that United States deems as a threat, we will deem that country as a threat. So in plain English, we're not going to do business with you if you are assisting with or trading with Haiti, because we deem them to be a threat to the United States. So we're not going to do business with you. So that's why no other countries was willing to do business or trade with Haiti. And that was done by design. Make no mistake about it. That was done by design. And Napoleon's motivation in doing what he did was because he wasn't simply just looking to enslave Africans. He told his white brethren, he told them that the very same people that we are enslaving are the ancestors of the people who built the pyramids in Africa, who the science and all of these beautiful things were built. So Napoleon knew that it was more of a priority to stop the economic progress of Black people. He knew that, He knew that. He understood that. So don't think that it was just about conquering them. He knew that he had to stop the progress of Black people because he knew our potential. He understood that.
Man.
So, you know, but listen, we can go on and on, brother.
Yeah.
Very lovely conversation as always.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna well, as you know, I'm gonna put together a podcast, and I want to engage in real conversations with real people about real issues, a lot of the issues that we're just not talking about. So, you know, you're definitely one of the people that I would love to bring onto the show. You know, I really want people to learn. I just want to challenge people to think. Oh, that's your little princess there?
Yeah, she got up because she took a nap. You say hello.
Hi.
Get down.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I'm just trying to think of names for the show. I mean, I put up a little post earlier. Some people had some pretty cool suggestions. But I really want to do this. I'm going to build a website. I'm going to, you know, we'll do these interviews and I'll put it up on the website, and I'll just probably find a way of just like funneling the content over there so that when they eventually do throw me off of Facebook or whatever platforms for telling the truth, then there'll be a backup.
Right. So I mean, try YouTube. I'm not. Oh, you went already there.
I put up one video on YouTube that was mild, and they violated me for community standards. Like it's really crazy right now. I get through pretty much most of the time with TikTok, but the other day they permanently banned me without any explanation, and I appealed it, and they gave me my account back. So I don't know, but that's how they kind of keep you in line, because now, like, let's say if you've built up a certain amount of followers, and let's say you're monetizing and things like that, you're not going to want to risk it. So that's how they really keep people under that pressure not to. Don't get too radical on us. Don't speak too much truth, because we can snatch it all away from you. And when I logged in, and I never really thought it didn't really matter much to me, like social media. I know I use it, and I just like to spread little messages here and there. But when I tried to log into TikTok, where I have like a lot of followers, and then it just said you're permanently banned, that really it hit me in a certain way. Like, wait a minute.
You know
And
the
it made
irony
me
I find in that? You know the
Say it
irony
again?
you know the irony I find in that?
Uh-huh.
Part of the gang violence that we see occurring in New York is driven by drill rap. And you know what drill rap is, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
drill rap scene is what it is. Part of the reason is because they are putting their videos on YouTube,
On YouTube.
getting
Yeah.
10 million, 15 million views. And these kids, I say again, these kids are making $20,000 and $30,000 a month for putting up these drill videos, and the label is sometimes matching or giving even more money because of it. But you told me that you had your account flagged, but you can essentially give a platform for promoting drill music where they are talking about killing their ops,
And they got guns
guns on
flashing
it,
in the videos.
who they're gonna kill,
Uh-huh.
and that's okay.
Admitting to crimes.
That doesn't violate community standards,
Community
and they
standards.
are monetizing Black death, Black violence.
Yeah.
But I just found that interesting that if you say something that might be enlightening but goes against their standards, they will ban your account. But these kids who are on there with guns and
That's something we really need to, like, you see, that needs to really be highlighted. Like, it's
and
okay
making
for
real
Black.
money.
Yeah, it's okay for Black people to get on there and call women B words and
Mhm.
have weapons and talk about killing and shooting everybody.
Yeah.
But if you're a Black person who dares to say something like, "Hey, I choose autonomy over my own body," that
Mhm.
violates community standards, and you're thrown in jail.
Right.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I think that's something that we certainly should
We need to discuss.
bring light to. Now I know it's a messy issue because
Right.
you start getting in freedom of speech, and what is freedom of speech?
See,
Right.
but the thing is, I'm really not a proponent of like silencing people. That's just the honest truth. I'm not a person who says we should silence or censor, because I believe that everyone has a right to their own voice. I think you can teach people, educate them, try to steer them in different directions. But if you get to the point where you're just like straight up silencing people, where do you draw the line from there? Who gets to determine what is good speech and what's bad speech? So for me, the solution to bad speech is good speech. The solution to misinformation is information. But when you use this broad stroking brush and you just say you're done, you're done, you're done. I get it. If you're a private platform or whatever, then you do what you want to do. You can set your own standards. I get that.
Mhm.
Which is why I think we need our own again. You know what I mean? I do believe though
That's
that
not
we
even
have.
just on that's not just on social media, Tone. That was the whole thing with Colin Kaepernick. If that wasn't about freedom of speech, I don't know what is. If you're kneeling in
Right.
protest, that falls under the
Yeah.
same thing. You just didn't like what the brother did. So
Right.
therefore you're going to censor it.
And
That's an
remove him.
expression of speech. So it all falls under the same umbrella of censorship. But this is the times that we're living in, sadly, unfortunately.
What's crazy is every mechanism is put in place to maintain
Mm.
Black dysfunction. to maintain the status quo, which profits from the degradation of Black people.
Yes.
But the moment you try to do something that uplifts your people, you're silenced.
Right.
That's the most overt display of anti-Blackness that you could ever see. Yet we have so many of us on here celebrating shit like it's all good. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, it's as I said, you just want to bang your head against the wall, and you know, this is what it is. I don't really waste too much time trying to talk to white folks. I try to talk to us and wake us up in what we need to do. But you're talking about the Stockholm syndrome that clearly exists, and you're talking about a people who has had ignorance imposed on them and who was forced to view the world through the lens of what was white. Everything is white, and it is still clearly present today in everything that we do, everything that's said, our religions, our spiritualities. There's no religion that did not come out of Africa. Now, you tell that to some people, they'll lose their mind, but that's the truth. They all came out of Africa, from Hinduism to Buddhism to everything. But they'll tell you, you know, no Black people were around here. They'll tell you that, you know, the original man was white, which is just silly. You know,
it's just crazy that, you know, we've been like the propaganda that we've been hit with for what, let's say 400 or 500 years. It's still with us today. Like it's ever present today. Like that's crazy. Even as far as like even the stigmatization of Black men, you know, you see that we're still a lot of the nonsense that was, you know, these narratives imposed upon us, they're still prevalent today, even though we know it's not true. We can acknowledge that Black men were caricaturized as savages and feral beasts that are going to rape your white women and you know, will rape all of this. We know that was propaganda that was placed upon Black men. Yet most of the social norms of today still are contingent to that same sort of propagandizing of Black men, and we don't see how
they've used our own women to emasculate us and to continue that narrative. We all know that, but this is sadly, you know, you will very rarely, if ever, find a Black man who is welcome, a strong Black man who is unapologetic and not scared. You will very rarely, if ever, see him being given a platform to push an unapologetic Black narrative. You very rarely, if ever, see that unless they
you won't. You just won't. But you know what? I'm gonna provide that platform. So
well, we definitely need that, and I certainly would.
Yes, I'm gonna invite brothers like you and Dre on. Oh, okay. I see Dre's gonna come in, and I know you gotta go, brother. But I'm gonna just chat with him just for a few minutes. But I want to do this again, and like I said, we're gonna put up a structured format, and we're gonna like really go over things. But I really want to get you guys to contribute to this platform that I'm gonna build. It's gonna be something really good.
Absolutely. Big shout out to you, Jay. I see you with the El Haj hat on. Much respect. You know,
yes, sir.
Definitely, much respect, brothers. Okay, all right.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you, brother.
All right.
Yeah. So, Dre,
what's going on?
Yes, sir. It's been a minute. You know.
Yes, it's definitely been a minute.
We'll chop it up with you in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how are things going with this new transition that's, you know, here in New York City with our new mayor and the mandates, and you know,
it seems like they just make it up as they go along is the way that I've been taking it. Every day it's you wear the mask, you don't wear the mask, you get one vaccine is enough. If you're working on, now you need both vaccines, now you need both vaccines and the booster. And I don't want to. I shouldn't be saying probably that V word. I don't want to
Oh,
get this
right,
whole
word,
video.
right? Because
Yeah,
it
actually, I
might
just
trigger
realized
the
that.
algorithm.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But for me, it doesn't really matter because I mean, they shut me down every now and again, but I find my way back. I got like 5 backup accounts or something. But yeah, so the main thing that we've been pretty much talking about is just the bamboozlement of Black people. And I think where we are today, do you think that there's hope? I hate to say it that way, but
And it's so funny that you bring up like the word hope, because I found like myself recently, I like sort of lost hope. Like I abandoned social media. I actually deactivated all my social medias. So I really wasn't found on social media probably about the last 5 or 6 months, because it was just too much to see. Like I found myself arguing with people, not even arguing, but just stating a point. And people were stating like obvious fictitious points about how everything's going to be better once we get Joe Biden in office, and then we get Joe Biden in office, then he needs more time, and then it's just over these time wasting mechanisms where they're not getting anything tangible. So you start to get frustrated. You start to really wonder, like, are we ever going to like realize this con game that's being run on us over and over? Like, as they blatantly give other groups tangibles, they tell us that we're selfish to demand tangibles, and then they have what I call corporate activists who come out and try to represent our interests, and then immediately double back and then start to undermine our interests. And then when it's election time, they come back and try to misrepresent us again. And it's like we keep falling for the same con game over and over. Like you wonder, is there really an end to this con game, or how do you end this con game?
And I can, and that's, listen, that's frustrating. Like to have to, like, you know what? I totally relate, because participating on social media as a semi-conscious person can be extremely frustrating, because it would give you a really strong sense of hopelessness and despair, because I often find myself saying that this can't be real people that are saying this stuff.
Yes.
You do know on social media, I guess they have bots and things like that, but I do see a lot of people that I know regurgitating a lot of nonsense that just doesn't make sense. So how do you resolve this stuff when you're giving people actual information, like real hard data, and they still refuse to receive anything that you're saying? I mean, do you think part of the solution is us just getting off of social media?
I definitely think that might be part of the solution. Me personally, I had to take a step back because I felt like I was a willing participant. And I was like, if I'm willing participating in what I see is just people wasting time, is what I call it. People just engage in these time wasting arguments. I'm like, I'm a willing participant. Maybe I should take the first step in removing myself if I want other people to remove themselves as well. So I was like, I guess I'll be the change I want to see. But like also it conflicts me because I feel like those nuggets of information I may have been dropping, they're now no longer received. So it's sort of a double-edged sword.
That's
So
the
I feel
quandary.
like, I took a personal break for myself.
Right. So
Until
for
I could figure
your own emotional health, because and it's true, I think that we all need to take a break from social media at some point. I think we need to take regular breaks from social media. But I am one person who does not want to completely detach themselves from social media, because I feel a sense of duty to inform people, because if you know, and you know that other people just don't know, what does that really say about me if I'm not willing to try to provide them with that information? And I guess that's the burden that we sometimes bear as a learned people, but there are those people who are just completely averse to any type of correction or new information. And that's where I personally struggle, because you know how people will try to bait you into an argument, and no matter what you say, they're going to disagree with you. Those are the people that I have to do better with that, because I hate, maybe it's because I just hate to to see stupidity or something.
It irks you because you really wonder, like, is this person arguing me in bad faith, or do they truly believe this? Because this doesn't make any sense. Like, how could they come to this conclusion? Like, you start to really wonder that. And that's why, in taking a step back, I started to say maybe I should focus in more so like-mind circles. But then you come to the same
There's a
quandary that
danger with that.
if you're in one circle and everybody is in agreement, it's like then
Becomes an
there's
echo
not
chamber.
really it's not really any relevant information being, or you're not being exposed to any new ideas, because sometimes you may find a counterpoint that actually counters your point. It actually may be better than your point. It actually may be correct, and it'll encourage you to actually look into some things.
Oh, absolutely. See, I try to place myself in situations where I'm surrounded by people who are smarter than me. I always do that because I really like to learn. But at the same time, I also do understand that I do have a lot to contribute. So I have personally, if you're talking about this social media experience, I have personally found it to be a better experience to communicate, to engage in platforms like Clubhouse, because you can actually you have actual conversations with these people. And I like TikTok only because I can just say what I gotta say and I just put it there and I let people argue about it in the comment section. So and you get a wider I don't know, you get wider access.
I actually don't have a TikTok. I'm completely clueless. Clubhouse, I've engaged in a few Clubhouse debates and I found them to be pretty good if they're well moderated.
Yes. And what's funny is I found myself in rooms that I probably never would have really saw myself in at all. Like I was I don't know if you know about like Dr. Robert Malone, the guy who invented mRNA technology, the stuff that they use in the vaccines. But anyway, they deplatformed him on Twitter. And, I went on Clubhouse and I found myself in a conversation with his colleagues. And and they invited me up on stage. So I'm here, in a very deep conversation with doctors, scientists, people who really understood what I've been talking about for all this time and getting suspended on social media about. And honestly, it validated a lot of the things that I said. And I also learned a lot. So just for me, it was a humbling experience to be around people who were more informed than me on certain issues. And that excites me. I think we're in a place in society today where whenever we're introduced to new information and things that maybe make us feel like we don't know everything, we shut down.
Yeah, some people view it as almost an attack on them. And it's like sometimes it's nothing wrong with just being quiet and just learning the game is what I call it. Sometimes people, they know more than you. Just be quiet. You need to take in that information.
Right. So why do people take it as almost a personal insult to be corrected? And I think social media has a lot to do with that, because social media tells you that you are the master of all truth, and whatever world you create for yourself is just that applies to everything.
And that was some of the problems I started to have with social media, in that I feel like it gave too many platforms to not who was correct, but who was the loudest. Like this person is the loudest. This person could be completely wrong, but this person has the followers, they have the image, so this person is who is perceived as correct.
That makes sense. And an example of that, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I always double back to, like, I see people speak on certain like topics and I'm like, yo, it's crazy. Like we have real doctors, like philosophers, physicists, all types of experts on these subjects. And you'll see there's people who have like no credibility in these fields and they speak on these topics. And these are the people who like are representatives of the topic. And I'm like, yo, we can go to and at our fingertips, if you think about it, like we have access to like real doctors, real physicists, real people who are experts who have done this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And it'll be some random whoever who'll speak on the topic and people will take that as gospel.
Yeah, listen, even just think about it. Who do we default to when it comes to activism and social justice and racial justice? Comedians.
Comedians, celebrities, singers,
rappers. Like,
yeah.
What? Why is it that everyone else has like whenever it comes to a certain topic, you have specifically qualified people to discuss those topics. But whenever you bring black people into the conversation, you come by way of their comedian representatives or their celebrities.
Then it turns into, well, your representative on this is Cardi B. Not to pile on her, but then you start to take a step back. You see, like, the white people, they'll bring out Jared Taylor, they'll bring out one of them, and our representative will be Cardi B, and we'll be like, this isn't a fair debate.
And most of their representatives are PhD holders.
Yeah,
they're accredited. These are people who know what the hell they're talking about, and it's like we just never seek out those people within our community, and they are aplenty. So that, for me, it delegitimizes us collectively, especially. And I'm not trying to like throw no jabs at people, but there's a lot of people in the social justice space who I believe do a huge disservice for the collective of black people, especially when speaking on issues that they clearly have no idea what they're talking about. And it frustrates me when I see them have these large platforms that reach so many people, and the best I could probably do is just get in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? So that's frustrating when you see someone basically spreading the real misinformation, but then when you dare to challenge it, you're probably going to get banned or suspended for violating community standards or whatever it is. Like, that's extremely frustrating.
And I call them more so like corporate activists. Like, I saw something with Al Sharpton, and of course, he's a Democratic show, but we have all of these corporate activists, and the way they try to equate their activism to, I'm like, we have some of our master scholars and our real activists who are still alive, like Bobby Seale and people like that, where it's like we have people who really put their life, like, people don't understand what activism truly was back then. There's people who really put their lives, they really put work in.
Right. And they were willing to sacrifice and lose something, including their own lives. That's right.
We have these people who, they're not even willing to sacrifice their job. They're whole motivated by getting a job on, I think, what is it, MSNBC? That's the whole goal.
A pundit or something.
You get a job, or you get some tie to some corporation, and now it seems like that's the goal of activism nowadays. When it's like, no, that's not what activism is supposed to be about. It's not this corporate activism.
Or show up to some protest line and get a zip tied around your hand and walk to the precinct for 10 minutes, and then you feel you
post
did
post it
and post it on social media. A person's character is shown in the things that they do when nobody else is looking. And social media has turned activism and just human decency into a TV special. It's turned it into performance. So I call it's all performative politics to me, and performative activism. And we need to I really want to build something that gets us out of that space. Tristan says we can't afford hope anymore as black people. We just have to accept that many of us aren't going to make it in the next 5 to 10 years. Results are the only things that matter.
Yeah, that sort of speaks to what I was talking about. I go back and forth where I do agree. I'm like, unfortunately, it looks like many of us can't make it.
Right.
But then you go back and you really don't want to leave anybody behind. You do want to try to reach those people, because maybe you might be reaching a person who's really going to be the next activist. It's like, do you leave the people behind, or do you try to continue to extend that hand to reach those people? And that's where I get really conflicted on that sometimes.
All right, I'm loving this, Dre. All right, you not to say that you weren't like this before, but did you reach some type of epiphany? Because you were a lot more, I don't know, like you were a lot more young Malcolm in our previous engagements, but you seem a lot more, I don't know, more settled.
Maybe it's the lack of social media. I'm just
no, it's great. Like, I love it. It could be the lack of social media, the stress that is incurred from engaging in this platform that is often very hostile and frustrating. And I myself, I'm going to take a break again very soon as I'm building this new platform that I'm talking to, that I was talking to you guys about. Like, I'm really gonna set up this podcast, man. I'm gonna actually do it properly, produce it, and probably do like half-hour shows and just do it the right way. And we're gonna talk about all the conversations that nobody else wants to talk about. And I don't care if social media, if I get kicked off all of social media, because I'm gonna have my own independent. It's gonna have its own independent website where we can send everybody to. So, and I really want, conscious-minded Black people to really. I think we gotta get away from this huge social media machine.
Yeah, because
I'm sure when you took your time off from this social media machine, you saw how beautiful the world really is, and also how toxic this environment can be in this social media space.
when you take these type of breaks, you come back after like 2-3 months, and like out of curiosity, you may just log in for 5 minutes. Like, I'm gonna just let's see what's going on, and you realize like, wow, I'm not missing anything. Like, you find yourself so tethered to it where when you have it, you like, oh man, I didn't check anything today. Let me see what's going on. Let me see. But then you take a 2-month break, you like, largely, I didn't really miss anything.
So would you say that social media has become is an addiction?
Definitely feel like it's an addiction. Like the first few days you don't have it, it like runs through your mind like, wow, what if I'm missing this? What if somebody's trying to get in contact with me on there? They can't find me. But then you realize like the relevant people have my phone number. If they really want to contact me, they can contact me like that. If it was anything urgent, like it really like goes through your mind like that.
And I think that social media has been very successful at detaching us from each other and kind of severing the human connection that we all have. Like, I even with my own like my own friends and stuff like that, it's like I'll sit back and think like, damn, we haven't gone out, we haven't chopped it up like in a minute, and we just live like 5 blocks away from each other. But we may have chatted on social media or liked a picture here or there, but it's not the same thing as that real human connection when you're talking to somebody, you're looking at them, seeing their expressions, laughing with them. And I think that's become one of the biggest problems with social media, and which also makes us vulnerable to a lot of the attacks that we're under from the state and from these corporations, because we don't even see it coming, because we're living our world in a virtual reality space.
Yeah, and they've gotten so bold. They're trying to call it the metaverse now.
Because they done effed up the real world, and they want you to live in there. There.
So
I don't know, man. They're selling real estate in the metaverse now. I mean, personally, I think it's kind of stupid, but there's a market for it now.
Yeah, you really don't even. You wonder how it's going to go, because when I heard about what NFTs were and then the concept of it, I was like, people are really buying this? I was like, what's the point in this?
They are.
Yeah, and they are for big money. And
yeah, but I personally prefer something tangible, something that I can touch.
Oh yeah,
I prefer real land because I can have the real land where the house is set up or the building is set up, where the computer is set up, where the metaverse is inside of that. I want to have a piece of the earth. Owning pieces of the earth is still tangible, the best asset that you can have.
And that was why I had apprehensions about the whole buying NFTs and buying the virtual land, because I started to notice a red flag going back to what we were talking about, the people who have the most attention and the people who are the loudest. When I started to see like celebrities and rappers saying, hey, we have this NFT, and these are people tied directly to corporate entities, it started to raise a red flag for me. I was like, these people don't seem like they would know about NFTs and know about crypto and all this type of stuff. And when they started pushing NFTs really hard, and because you're not getting something that's tangible, I was like, this seems like they could easily just pull the rug on this one day and this is worthless.
Right. That's exactly it. Because think about it, even if their intention is not to scam you, the potential and the ability is there to snatch everything away from you just like that, which is why I said, even with, just being in the social media space, when I logged into TikTok, and I don't know, I know I got tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 followers or some shit like that over there. But when I tried to log in, it was like, you've been permanently banned. No explanation, nothing. You've been permanently banned for violating community standards. Now, even though, I mean, it's so whatever. But then when I thought about it in that moment, I'm like, damn, they just snatched my whole entire voice away from me. All the impactful videos that I put out, the inspirational videos, the informational videos that people were really learning from and gravitating to, they just snatched it in 1 second. It was gone. And that was a wake-up call to me. And it told, and it's like so many people are investing so much of themselves into these corporate spaces that they can literally just snatch away from you in a second, just like that. Remember, people are invested, they're monetizing a lot of shit on Instagram and Facebook, all of these places. So what happens if one day they just pull the plug?
Yeah.
You lose your livelihood, you lose everything.
Yeah, a lot of people we don't have tangible skills as a society anymore. A lot of us in society, we think getting in front of a camera and talking, that's our tangible skill. And like you said, if they pull the plug on that, you might starve. Like you have nothing you can do.
What happens if the internet shuts down? I'm just saying, like, just what happens? And that's why, brother, that's one of the good things about being, an entrepreneur. The major driving motivation for me to become an entrepreneur was when I got fired from the last job I ever had. And I was like, you know what? There's no way that I'm ever going to position myself where somebody has the authority to take my stream of income away from me and tell me that I'm not able to get money anymore. So I decided I'm going to make money for myself. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to tether my ability to make money to any system that I don't have to, where they can just take it away from me. And I think we've become overly dependent upon social media. Now it's not just for your social life. Now it's for your income.
Yeah.
You're handing over a lot of control to people. And I just think, especially as Black people, we got to learn from history and learn from our previous mistakes, and don't follow the crowd into everything. Yeah, you can do what you got to do, make your little hustle, get your little money here and there, but we should always be prepared outside of the system. So I believe in seceding from this system, economically, as far as education is concerned. We need to withdraw from this system as much as possible, so that if and when they start shutting shit down, we're still able to sustain.
Exactly, because like going back to what we were talking about, where it seems like the people who have these voices on these platforms, when I feel like during the pandemic, we started to strangely see people start to represent these facts and sort of represent things that like the CDC would say. You would be like, why is this person like endorsing this? Why is this person trying to get us to go and get this certain shot? Or why is this starting to happen? And you forget that these voices, because they may get their revenue streams from these platforms are massive corporations. So if they like how you said, they just snatch your TikTok page away. If you're somebody who has less morals and they come to you and they would say, hey, you know what, we're taking your page down unless we want you to endorse this certain thing, and that's your livelihood. You're like, I have no way to feed myself other than this. And then you start to get people who they'll start to sacrifice their integrity and they'll lead people down this way. And then and you as just a consumer or somebody who's viewing them, you're like, why would this person do this? And sometimes I think people don't think like this person is actually really paid by this corporate entity. So they have vested interest in doing what that corporate entity would tell them to do.
So we're underestimating the capacity for some people to just go after the bag, and just abandon their scruples and morals and just do what they're paid to do, or do what they're doing just in order to chase after access or opportunity. And I've actually seen that with a lot of our local elected officials here in New York. It's been very disappointing. Like I'm seeing a lot of talking points coming from many Black elected officials, because my concerns with Black people. So it's like to see these people, a few of whom I have respected, to see them now starting to parrot a lot of these mandates, CDC, corporate sponsored talking points, man, it breaks my heart,
Yeah.
and it's discouraging. It makes you wonder, like, are there any authentic people left in any of those spaces that are supposed to be advocating for Black people? Is there anyone left?
Yeah, and that's a dilemma because it seems like once you start to like they say, you lie with dogs, you get
Get
fleas.
up with
Once
fleas.
you start to get too entangled in sort of, I guess, party politics, and sort of like, if you're
Yep.
for sure, if you're a Democrat, it seems like you're completely beholden to the Democratic Party, where you have to represent directly
Right.
that they're the main ones who are pushing that you have to get these certain shots, you have to parrot these certain lines. So it's like, in the same token, with you getting your page taken away, I guess they might see their Senate seat or something like that might possibly be snatched from them, where they'll tell them, look, you're not going to have our representation. You're not going to have our support unless
Right.
you start to parrot these lines. There's a lot of people who I see were like, it was never an issue for them. I never even heard them speak on it. Suddenly they would start to speak on it. And it would always strike me as, why is this person speaking on that?
Right. I've
I think
actually also go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think sometimes we underestimate how much people are beholden to these certain entities, whether corporations, political parties,
Mm-hmm.
these platforms, these people per se. They have a lot of power, and they can really just wrestle away what you have, and that might make you flip flop on your views.
I think we also see how beholden they are to certain entities, even in their silence, because as we've been going through the most overt display of authoritarianism that in my lifetime, in this current environment that we're in, ev almost every damn Black public elected official and social justice warrior has been completely silent completely on all of this, all of these illegal mandates that have basically been impacting Black people the most. Like, people forget, like, who are a lot of these policies really targeting, and who are they impacting the most? It's us. It's always us. And that is probably the most heartbreaking thing for me, to see that all of these people that I once kind of thought were really fighting for Black people, they've been completely silent. Like, they haven't said anything. And I've been like kind of on my own. I feel like I've been on my own fighting this battle while they all just standing on the sidelines. But now, as the narrative is beginning to unravel, and people are seeing that these mandates have been purely unscientific and unwarranted, and as the rest of the world is starting to fall back from the bullshit, now I'm seeing that they're starting to, and even the media, the corporate media, is starting to make a little bit of room for truth telling, because they know they got to kind of fall back a little bit because they're being exposed. Now, guess who's crawling out of the caves, starting to, give little commentary on it? The same Black folk who've been silent for the past 2 damn years, as Black folks been getting their head bust for not wearing masks and getting arrested. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Now y'all want to start talking.
I call that chic activism, where when it's popular, then all of a sudden you're an activist. I feel like during the George Floyd protests, we saw that a lot of people who were suddenly protesters. I was like, oh, because
Yeah.
now it's cool to protest
Yep.
white supremacy. Now everybody is out holding hands and in the street. But I'm like, but when it's time to put in the real work, nobody's there to be found. When it's unpopular, nobody is to be found. I think somebody was having this conversation where they were talking about how after the civil rights movement, a lot of people like said they marched with Dr. King and stuff like that. And you see how much love Dr. King gets now. But older people I know, they was like, Dr. King was probably the most despised person in America at the time. People did not want to be seen with him. But we rewrite history to say, because now it's popular. Oh yeah, I was with Dr. Martin. You have all of these people who will come out the woodwork and claim that I was right
you
along
weren't
with
no
them.
damn revolutionary.
Yeah. No. He was despised. It's people engaging in that chic activism all the time, is what I call it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that's just frustrating. And it's like, I don't know how to look at these people anymore. Some of these people who I once called friends, you know what I'm saying? And I can't look at you the same anymore because I know that your true intention is not for the protection or upliftment of Black people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's a lonely space when you truly care about Black people and you want what's best for them. That's a lonely space. And that's why I know I could never get into politics because that arena is just not, it's not a place where people who truly want to see upward movement for Black people are welcome.
Yeah, definitely. It's the benign neglect policy. It's almost as if everybody else can have something, but if we catch you trying to uplift Black people, we're gonna move you back down. I don't know whether sometimes you wonder some of the tinfoil kufi conspiracy theories. Like, do they, when you get into politics, do they sit you down and like have that conversation? Like, are they that bold with our politicians? Like, do they you make it to Senate and they sit you down and they go, okay, everybody but Black people can have something. If you
would
try
think
it,
so. I think it's
yeah.
implied. I think it is
Okay.
implied, and overtly so. It's implied, but I don't think it's like just straight up stated like you can't do nothing for Black people. But they'll say things like, well, you know, those type of politics, you know, they're a little extreme. You know, we may not be able to move the needle too much if you do that, but hey, let's compromise. Let's do this because you know that's a hot topic. They'll say certain things like that to dissuade you from moving in that direction. But it's common knowledge in the political world that advocating for Black people is just it's not really something that you really want to even like legitimately get into. It's always empty symbolism. And that's not good enough for me at all. So I don't know, maybe 40 years from now they'll speak kindly of me, but I know I'm about to be hated big time. So
it's been a while since we spoke. I wanted to get your opinion on our new mayor. How do you feel?
Well, you already know how I've always felt about Mr. Adams.
Yeah,
but I think he's
a politician's politician.
He's a politician, and I think he's I think he's showing everybody that he's exactly who he said he was on the way in. The one thing about him though is he didn't like try to placate anybody. He told y'all what it was, but for some reason, I think people thought because he's a Black guy and he's charming that he was gonna come on in here and just, you know, do everything that he said he wasn't gonna do. And you know, the problem I have, the issue I have is when it comes to crime, right? We know that crime levels are like out of control, but we also know why things are the way they are. We know why the crime is at an all-time high. So then while we know, we need, you know, more, you know, I don't want to say more police, but we need better policing in our communities. But it's like, damn, we're here now. And it's like, we need them now. But last year and the year before, we knew that the shit that you were doing was going to get us here. Yeah. It's like you sat back and you watched them I watched them set us up for this. And now we're here. We're here now.
Exactly.
Like, babies are getting shot. You know what I'm saying? All of this has happened. We're here now. So what really can we do now? Because we handed this to them. So what are we going to say? No, don't don't beef up policing in areas where you got open drug markets. Because I'm here in East New York, and you know, it's crazy over here. It's wild out here.
Yeah, I'm in East New York too.
Right. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? What am I going to say? No cops. When I got a 14-year-old kid that's walking the streets and he's facing danger every day. So
that's where like the frustration comes into place, because you see them setting us up for the long play. Like, I looked at it as, of course, I feel like we can only go up from de Blasio at this point. But like even during the de Blasio administration, I saw them setting us up for the long play with the way they were doing what they were calling reform, which was supposed to be releasing nonviolent offenders. And it looked like it just turned into they just released everybody. There was people shooting people and getting released. And I was like, but this is... I was like, this isn't a nonviolent offense. I was like, they're setting us up for the long play to where we're going to be punished for pushing this reform. And they're going to say, look, we did reform and look what happened. We're never going to do it again now. And I was like, they just set us up for the long play.
And I just put up a post the other day. I said, Democrats, they propagate the conditions that lead to violent crime, and then they pat themselves on the back for engaging in symbolic efforts to solve the problem when
Yep.
they're the ones that set you up for it in the first place.
When some of us were screaming while it was happening, we were saying like, hey, that's not the reform we asked for. Don't let them tell you that they gave you reform. We did not ask them to do that. We
But
did not tell them
who was pushing that reform?
our
These
corporate activists
and these white gentrifiers that flood our neighborhoods and our communities, and they're the ones that people like Eric Adams listens to. He listens more to his donors, like the Jewish community and the Asian community, like the people who's really putting that money in his bag. And he he seems to really dislike a lot of the white liberal progressive political arm here in New York City right now. But we know that because Eric Adams is a Republican. I don't know why people he ain't no Democrat. He's a Republican. The dude been a Republican. He just switched to Democrat in order to get his position, his seat. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I would say, like, on the school thing, I do agree with him that kids should be in school. I do agree with that because I don't subscribe to this the manipulation with these lockdowns and the mandates and this and that. It's bullshit, because you can see that. How can they say that, you know, we're all in danger of dying and this and that, yet, you know, all of the actions that you saw that got us here, you know, you throwing concerts and vaccinated only, this and that. The CDC is now allowing people to go back to work after 5 days of contracting, even if you're positive. Like, I thought this was dangerous.
Yeah.
So now you're everything that you're doing is contradicted to what you're saying as far as this being such a dangerous thing.
Exactly. I likewise, I agree with him on the schooling thing too, because I was like, at least I just want you to take a stand one way or another. It's either it's so dangerous everybody has to stay home, or you can go back. I'm like, but this one day it is, one day it isn't.
So if he's taking that stand, right? Why are we still under mandate? So this is the contradiction I'm saying. So when he said keep the kids in school, cool. We know, listen, bro, it ain't that serious. I mean, I don't want to talk about that the C word and the V word right now, because I'm not trying to get struck down. But at the end of the day, if you're saying that kids need to go to school, and the CDC is saying that you've cut the isolation date time period in half, why are we still under mandates?
Yeah.
Why? And I personally think that him and Bill de Blasio, they had a little agreement where de Blasio doubled down on some of the most ridiculous, asinine policies as possible as an alley-oop to Eric, so that when he got in, you know what I'm saying, it'll make him look better. Because the shit that Blasio was doing towards the end, it made absolutely zero sense. Yeah. It seemed like he was just trying to figure out the best way to piss New Yorkers off even more and burn down this city. Like, it couldn't have gotten any worse. So when passing the torch to Eric Adams, obviously he's going to do better, even though he's really not what is right for this city. But you know what? We get to make him a little bit of a hero for undoing some of the most ridiculous policies that de Blasio put in place. So it's a perfect strategy.
Yeah, because even I had to speak him up, because I was like, it's only up from de Blasio at this point, which is like, It makes a lot of sense from what you're saying. I was like, we can only go up.
Yeah, this is politics. Yeah. It's politics. And think about it. We already know de Blasio was not, and I know his name is de Blasio, but he's a bozo to me, so that's just what I'm always going to call him. But de Blasio, we knew he was not going to run for governor, because there's no way, a chance in hell, nothing. So my postulation was that he was effing everything up as bad as possible in the city, so that as a favor to Eric Adams, so that it would guarantee him some sort of positioning in his administration somewhere down the line, so he can still make some money and eat a little bit in this political arena, because his political career is over after this. So the only way for him to even have any type of favor or privilege left is if he stays on the right side of Eric Adams. Notice him and Eric Adams hasn't said one negative word about de Blasio, and he makes sure to always say it. I'm not here to criticize the previous administration. We're not going to do that. I'm not what anything happened before. Yeah, we know, because, bruh, I'm telling you, they cool like that. And I think de Blasio did him a favor. They had some type of an agreement, because I cannot see any rational human being enacting all of those ridiculous policies and like being serious about it. That had to be an alley-oop, a political favor.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think it'll come to fruition. Now, when you see de Blasio announced as some, I don't know, some secretary of this or some type of head of the something education or mental health, the new Thrive NYC program or some shit, then we'll know it comes full circle. A favor for a favor.
That would make a lot of
sense. That's just how it happens. That's politics, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing that concerns me most, though, about Eric Adams is that he does not have solid policies or opinions, and he's evasive, and he kind of goes whichever way the political winds are blowing in. We know he's always been like that.
Yes.
So,
definitely.
and his opinions are largely motivated by his donors and the big wigs he's rubbing shoulders with. And now as mayor, you getting flown out with the Bitcoin dude, and they flying you to Puerto Rico, and you're doing
definitely. Because that's what I remember from his time as the Brooklyn borough president. I remember him. I don't even think he directly criticized the Jewish community. I think he was among someone who criticized the Jewish community, and he had to come out about the C word and how they weren't following any of the policies. And then he immediately had to come out and apologize to their community.
Who?
And I remember Eric Adams.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of that.
I remember Eric Adams apologizing to their community.
Because they surrounded him and his administration.
Oh, yeah, because I feel like you said, he's been on the tape for them for a while. So,
yeah. And it's like, what really can you do now? And remember, as borough president, he had a lot of say-so in land use. So he's, so that's why, you're going to see him championing development a lot. Those are the same folks that de Blasio was taking bribes from under his, well, let me say, de Blasio was under investigation for taking bribes from. These are all the same people that Eric Adams has had direct contact with the whole time he was borough president.
Yeah, and since you're speaking of development, I saw a story today about you were saying he doesn't like a lot of the white liberal establishment, I guess, because
right.
A lot of their base, they were for the I think the eviction moratorium either ended or soon to be ending, and they had a big protest outside. They had a big protest outside, and when people were like looking at the eviction moratorium, and I looked at that protest, the demographics of it was not what I think most people thought. There was white liberals who were out there who wanted that eviction moratorium extended largely.
Yeah, that's who it's always been.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that misconstrued. A lot of
people,
they try to put the face of it
for black people, because it's,
a lot of people,
because they used us for their political movements.
Yeah,
when they have their commercials and all of their little sponsored ads, they'll have a single black mother and some old black lady and something like that. But when the people who are really fighting for this eviction moratorium are the white people, the deadbeat, non-rent paying white people who feel entitled, that come to this city and don't want to pay no damn rent. That's what's happening here.
It was that gentrifier base that I noticed.
Gentrifiers.
Like they had that look where I was like, you guys probably all live in Bed-Stuy and these places where you're paying these $3,000 rents for one bedrooms, and you realize you can't afford it. Now you're trying to live for free forever.
Yes,
in New York.
Because they didn't realize how expensive it is to live in this city when they came from wherever the hell they came from, and it's just overall a sense of entitlement. And you have to remember, New York City has probably the largest concentration of Black and Hispanic homeowners, property owners in this country. So when you think of it that way, a lot of these white folks don't like having to pay rent to Black people. I can tell you that. I've owned a lot of properties in this city, and I still own a couple. And my white tenants have usually, the majority of the time, you can tell that they kind of have an issue with handing over thousands of dollars to this black dude, this real dark black dude all the time. So I get it. There's always that little bit of racism in there, but it's a huge sense of entitlement where they're even calling landlords criminals and saying that they're stealing money from renters by collecting rent. Like, what type of twisted ideology is that? So, what should have been a safety net for people who were who were really struggling, trying to pay their rent. Why didn't any of them push for some type of aid in paying the landlords the rent?
Exactly.
Some type of subsidized payments where they can say, okay, we'll help you with your rent and pay the landlords. But no, you wanted to help renters at the expense of landlords while demonizing landlords and treating landlords like they're all these multi-billionaire slumlords. And listen, bro, whether you're poor or rich, if it's your property that you pay your bills and you maintain and all of that, you have a right to get your rent. I have gone personally 2 years with no rent,
which is insane.
2 years with almost no rent, virtually no rent. Do you know how hard that is? And you still have to maintain and pay the utilities and repairs to a property where you got a bunch of people living in there and not paying rent because white liberals are running around saying, oh, no eviction. Now, yeah, it's no eviction, but it's no rent. Because if you know you can't get evicted for not paying rent, why are you going to pay your rent?
Exactly.
So sorry, I know I went off on this rant, but that's one of the policies that really pisses me off because it's once again white liberal Democrats who infiltrate our politics, and they push these broad policies that always tend to hurt black people the most. Because when you see all the people who are losing their properties and living in their cars and facing foreclosure because of this, it ain't white people.
And then I think it was just so important that the imaging of it, because that's what honestly it shocked me a bit when I saw this protest, because I always feel like, they always push they use those deceptive words, this disproportionately could affect black people. And so you think, why is it black? And then you see their protests where you see, hey, this is 200-300 white people actually outside
yes,
who don't want to pay rent. There was one black person I saw there. I was like, wait a minute, this is about 300 white people.
You saw majority white people protested with the eviction moratorium. You honestly seen majority white people at the George Floyd protest where they was tearing up department stores and breaking out people's windows. You know what I'm saying? When it came to these bail reform policies, it was white people that were out there pushing these policies. This is gentrification politics 101, and we've been under siege from that in New York City for the longest amount of time. And black people need to step up and stop allowing these people to come into our neighborhoods and push these policies that always just end up pushing us out and forcing us into the position where we have to live with higher crime rates. Because guess what? All of these things that they're pushing, when they're saying let all these folks out of jail and do this and that, and even with these drug policies now, where they got, they're not even arresting people anymore for having a open syringe with drugs in it. You're not even getting arrested for it right now because of white liberal politics. Where are all these drug addicts at? In East New York, Brownsville, Bushwick. They're in our neighborhoods. So do you think they care? They don't care. They're going to push these policies. And you know what they do? They know where the drugs is at. So what they do is they leave their neighborhoods in Bay Ridge and Bensonhurst and Howard Beach, and they come over to East New York and they set up tables where they give out free syringes to facilitate the drug use and the open drug markets. They're now opening in Harlem, and they're trying to open all across the city these what do they call those sites where you can inject needles into yourself?
I know.
Drug consumption sites where you can safely inject needles. So one of them, they open right across the street from an elementary school in Harlem. So you got dope fiends and crackheads standing out there waiting for their drugs, and they right across the street from an elementary school where there's black children in there.
I saw one in Bushwick. Like they're like methadone clinics essentially with lines around the block
Yeah.
of essentially drug addicts. And like you said, it's by design because if they attempt to open one of those clinics in, let's say, Howard Beach, that community would never allow them to. So by design, they pass these policies and then they funnel all the people into our communities,
Our
and then they
neighborhoods. That's
say,
right.
"Look, this is what you asked for." Because anytime they try to, if they were to try to open one of those type of centers in Howard Beach, even when they try to open the homeless centers,
Oh,
shelters
they
in
come
certain
out in
communities,
full
they
force
come out
to
in
fight it.
mass and say, "You will not open this in our community." And what happens? We have them piled into disproportionately in our communities.
Yeah. And I would challenge Black people, to challenge our gentrifier neighbors, or not even just the gentrifier neighbors, but the people who live outside of our community, who many of their own drug addict family members are now in our community, shooting up dope on the sidewalk in front of our children. Why don't they advocate for opening these drug rehab centers and these shelters and all of that in their community? Why is it that they're pushing for these things to be placed in our neighborhoods? Why don't they want that in their neighborhood? Why do they have to travel all the way to the hood to drop off drug paraphernalia for safe use?
Yeah.
Safe use in the middle of the sidewalk while our kids are trying to get to the corner store or going to the train or trying to get to the bus. This is crazy.
Why is it our community that has to have the open air prostitution market that we know exists in East New York, and they put up a bus there every once in a while, then whenever they get media attention, and then it leaves and then everything goes back to normal? Why is it our community? You don't see it in other communities. This happens because the police will shut all that down.
And for me, I would say this: if a quote unquote white ally is not speaking to advocate for economic policies and independence for Black people and education, those things, then they're not an ally. Because at the end of the day, it's really nice and convenient to pretend to have this holier than thou, bleeding heart type of political ideology when none of the results will impact you personally. It's very easy to engage in that and stand on your high horse, but I just wonder how they would feel if all of this stuff was dumped in their neighborhoods. Because now we're not even dealing with our own crackheads, we're dealing with their crackheads too.
Yeah.
Their daughters, their nieces and nephews and sons that are suffering under the opioid crisis. They're in East New York now. Most of the new dope fiends and crackheads that I see around here, they're white people. I'm coming outside, I'm chasing them off of the porch. They stealing our Amazon packages from our front door. This is ridiculous. So, Black people, it's time to wake up and identify your allies and your enemies. Because the way it is now, I don't know how much time we have left in this city, because they're really chasing us out. They're putting us in a position where many of us are, I don't even understand how people can even afford to rent in this city right now. But me as a property owner, I can tell you that I'm steadily losing money. And it's like they're blatantly trying to force you in a position where you have to sell your property for pennies on the dollar. Think about it. How does gentrification work? They come in, they push certain politics that drive crime rates up in your neighborhood. It floods your neighborhoods with drugs and violence, because all of these things, they get dumped in your neighborhood. What happens when you see all of that violence and the drug use and the crime rates go up? Well, the property value goes down. Yep. And what happens when that property value goes down? It gets very frustrating for the residents of that neighborhood, and they want to get the hell out. Now, couple that, you throw a heavy police presence in there. Now you got people getting bust over their head, and it's getting crazy and reckless. So what's happening now? Everybody's fleeing New York City, and they're going south, where the cost of living is more reasonable. And guess what? This was a down market because of the pandemic and all of this stuff. And remember, the lower market value in your neighborhood due to the high crime rates. So who's going to come in? Who has the capital to come in and scoop up all these properties for pennies on the dollar? Who has the cash? Does your Aunt Pam have that cash to come buy that house? No. It's these gentrifiers. It's these Indian and Chinese and Jewish investors who come in with a whole bunch of cash. They have the capital. They come in. You seen them knocking on your doors. Hey, I buy your house, all cash. Hey, you selling? You selling? This is what they do. They flood the black neighborhood with people trying to get you to sell your crib. And then sooner or later, some people are going to say, especially older people, they don't want to deal with the stress anymore. So they sell their properties for cheap. And what happens after we sell all of these properties and we move and get the hell out of here? They throw out whatever black tenants they had in there, whatever were left, do their little renovations,
and build the Barclays Center next door.
Yeah.
And they build the Barclays Center.
And they replace you with white, with the hippie community. And now the rents in the neighborhood are $4,000 or $5,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. And you can never, ever come back. Gentrification 101.
Yep.
So that's where we are. So, you know, I can say, me personally, I don't know how much time I have left in New York, brother.
Me too. I mean, as somebody who wants to be a homeowner one day, it's like you look and it's like, this is not feasible.
Oh, good. You do? We should talk.
Yeah, I would love to be a homeowner one day, but it's looking like it's never going to be feasible in New York City, in my opinion, compared to what I can get down south.
That's true. And you know, as a young man, you know, that's really good to hear you say things like that. But honestly, I would say to you that investing in real estate in New York City is something that it requires a lot of capital right now. And it's an unsure market, and it's too expensive. I wouldn't even do that if I were you. Yeah. It's like, think about it. Like, let's say you got to come up with 150,000 just to make maybe 100,000. Yeah. But if you go down south, you could maybe come up with 10 to 20,000, and you can still, you know, if you know what you're doing, you flip, you do whatever. Yeah. So you come up with 10, 20,000, you might make 100,000. You know,
but personally, this would be for my family to live in.
So like, to live in? Well, then, nah, you don't want to.
That's why I'm like, it's not feasible here.
Nah, not at all.
Yeah.
I hear that in order to live comfortably in New York City right now, you have to make at least $100,000 a year. Now, I don't know what that is. Now, I haven't worked for anyone since 1996, but I mean, back then, like 40,000 was caking.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What's considered a good salary now? Probably like 90, 80?
70? Well, that's the thing. Most jobs in the city, they start so drastically low. I think NYPD salary starts at like $42,000.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, that can't be right.
Yeah, NYPD starts at $42,000.
Isn't that like $20 an hour?
Yeah, teacher starting salary I think is about $60,000.
Yet the price of rent, the cost of rent since 1996 has probably doubled or maybe even almost tripled.
I think it's almost tripled.
Yeah.
Salaries are like have stagnated so much where I make a pretty decent amount to where if I moved down south, I would be in that like 10%.
Oh, you'd be great.
I'd make a lot. I'd be really making them. But in New York, like you said, you need over $100,000 to be, like they said, living comfortably.
So are you able to transfer down south? No, right?
No. So that's where I would have to fully get this entrepreneurship pop into where I can move down south, which I'm not adverse to that.
You know what? We should talk. You and I should talk behind the scenes, because one thing I've always loved to do is like give advice and help young entrepreneurs starting out. Like, I have personally started a multitude of young entrepreneurs, young Black entrepreneurs on their journey with real estate. And I would love to do that for you. That's just what I do, because I like to see my people win. But yeah, brother, I'm going to take my real estate portfolio down south. I'm getting the hell out of here. And I'm
Any place in
pursuing.
particular you're looking at?
No, I'm going to Florida. My whole
Oh,
family's
Florida.
down there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I may invest in other states, probably, but I'm going to set up shop in Florida. I already actually started a business in Florida, but I'll holler at you about that. I'll tell you about that offline. But
Okay.
yeah, I've already started setting things up, brother.
Okay.
You know, so Black people, let's start networking with each other. Like, if you have information, you know, because we have a wealth of information to offer each other in business, in education, politics. There's so many ways that if we network with each other, we can really build our community and build real institutions that will provide wealth for us. And all we got to do is just start trusting each other and seeing each other
Definitely.
as family, as friends, man.
Yeah,
Like,
don't think about getting over on the next man. Don't think you have this information. You need to hoard it because I don't want nobody else to get on. So I got this information.
yes,
So I'm gonna hold it so I can only have this particular market. When it's like there's enough for all of us to eat. So like if you have the game, you could teach somebody else the game because
helping
you never know.
someone else climb that ladder doesn't remove you from your position. And that's what we have to. We've been kind of programmed to see helping others up as somehow demoting ourselves and taking away from us. Helping your brother or sister does not it doesn't have to hurt you, and it doesn't hurt you. It actually helps you because now you've eased the pressure and you've lightened the load, because not only have you helped to bring someone else to a certain degree of success and wealth, but you've created an ally that will help you to further your agenda and your portfolio. We got to look at things that way, man. We got to network with each other, and that's the only way we win. That's the only way we win, and I'm down to do that. I'm down to do that, brother.
For sure.
So yes. So I know we kind of talked about a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna put together structured interviews where I'm gonna have like the questions, the talking points, all of that. And I'm still looking for a name to the show. Somebody said somebody said just call it the Tony Lindsay Podcast.
You can do that. I had a good name, and I think I did. I think I secured the YouTube page for it because I was going to do something like that. I'm gonna let you know behind the scenes. You can have the name if you want.
Okay.
I feel like it was a pretty good name.
Here's some suggestions before we go. One is uncomfortable conversations. That's two. No, that's my two. Another one is common sense. Tony Lindsay's Common Sense, or Common Sense with Tony Lindsay. The Tony Lindsay Podcast. And we have Tough Talk with Tony. And we have we have a different conversation. We have a deeper perspective, different point of view. Common sense is no common. Likely to be banned. Uncensored. What about Uncensored with Tony Lindsay?
It's kind of generic. I feel there's a lot of uncensored.
All right. Fact check. The Word with Tony Lindsay. Ground Effect. Tony's TV. Tony's Topic. It's too much Tony. Tony with the T. Tony with the T. Sensitive to Talk. Let's talk about it. Mel says, let's talk about it. Talks with Tony. How about Tony's Takes?
Tony's Takes.
A Third Eye's View. I think Tony's Takes would be a good segment in the show, like where I do we do like, how Charlemagne does Donkey of the Day, but
yeah,
Tony's Takes, but just actually driving home a point.
Uncomfortable Truths, maybe.
Uncomfortable Truths. Somebody said unvaxxed. Somebody says televised lies with Tony. What? Truth Talk with Tony. Untitled, unapologetically. Oh wait, unapologetic. Danielle said unapologetically Tony. Tony Lindsay's podcast. Oh shit, he says Tony Lindsay's podcast. Tony Lindsay's podcast. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Oh, somebody else said talking with Tony, tune in with Tony, sound off with Tony, and Tony Talks. Oh, we got another Tony Talks.
That one of those were pretty good. That Lindsay. Some people do good things with words. If you could put your last name in a way, perhaps Lindsay. If you could, I don't know if you're getting at what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it has say.
but to pronounce Lindsay, that doesn't sound right. Maybe
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Some people know how to do things with words. Like, well, I've seen some people come with very clever slogans. Like they took a word and they played with the word so much. Where I was like, wow, I didn't even see that in that word.
Lynn says Tony Lynn says. I don't know. I gotta figure it out,
Yeah,
but I need to figure it out fast because I want to get the logo and everything and start like getting the production value together because I'm gonna like set up a studio and everything where I'm gonna have guests come in. Like you're gonna come in and we're gonna do these things. It's not gonna just be relegated to these Zoom or StreamYard things. We're gonna film this like the real deal.
Okay.
So if you come up with any ideas, anybody else, if you come up with any ideas for the show, please just let me know. Send me an inbox and let's get this moving. I ain't paying nobody for the suggestion. But yeah. All right, brother. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. Whoever was listening. And Dre, hold on. While we go to the green room. Thank you, everybody. Bye.